We're joined today by Peyman Askari. Now, Peyman is the People's Party of Canada candidate for West Vancouver, Sunshine Coast, Sea to Sky Country riding. Hello again, Peyman. Good to see you again.
Hello, Robert. It's good to see you again.
For those who don't know, Peyman actually interviewed me about 7 months ago. So now it's my turn to flip the roles here and interview Peyman because he is a candidate now for the People's Party of Canada, and I've interviewed so many PPC candidates over the years. It only stands to reason that Payman be among them. So before we begin, though, I'd like to let people know how to see some of your stuff, Payman, because you've produced a lot of videos over the last year interviewing some fascinating, what I might want to call ordinary Canadians who are dissident and giving them a voice on your channel. So you want to tell people how they can see those videos and perhaps interact with you on your website as well?
Of course, you can always get a hold of me through my website, paymanaskari.ca. You can send me an email at info@paymanaskari.ca. You can watch my episodes on my website. You can catch them on YouTube and Rumble. The handle is in lay terms, like in layman's terms, because I try to simplify everything. And I'm most active. I am on Facebook and TikTok and Instagram, but I'm most active on X. The handle is Peyman Askari 451.
Rather incendiary handle.
Yeah, I was trying to be a little bit edgy. Yeah.
Okay, so let's begin then, Payman, by perhaps introducing yourself to the potential voters in your riding, which is a riding, I guess, best exemplified by the town of Whistler, or for those old enough to remember, the Beachcombers and Gibson's Landing. So tell us what the voters in your riding might want to know about you as a candidate, education, occupation, personal philosophy. What's your CV?
Certainly. So again, my name is Peyman Askari. I'm running for the People's Party in the riding of West Vancouver, Sunshine Coast, Sea to Sky Country, which I believe is the longest name in all of the ridings in Canada. I'm a little about me. I was born in Iran in 83. I came to Canada in 89. I've been here pretty much all my life. I consider myself a Canadian. Like in 95, when we had that referendum, I remember losing my mind as a Westerner. And, how could these Quebecers dare to leave our country? So I basically shed whatever cultural ties I had to my home country of Iran. I went to university in Toronto. I got my bachelor's in computer science, and then I went to university in England. I got my PhD in computational neuroscience, which is pretty much the same thing. Uh, I was an academic lifer for 8 years, so I got very lazy. I got sucked into the whole liberalism, leftism, socialism kind of cult. But then I started my own company in the tech space. I used to, pull cable, install security cameras, build little small data centers, and that really helped. It was a kind of like a wake up call for reality. This is how the world works. There's this thing called taxes, and it's not something that you want. So that brought me more to the center. I wouldn't say I'm far right or right. I'm in the center, and I believe strongly in individual rights. For the voters, the values that are really important to me are things like truth and honesty. And I'm not just using those to just as hollow words, but take what's happening with the media right now. We have state-sponsored media in Canada that's literally brainwashing people. It's whipped people up into a frenzy with this whole, Trump is the big bad Hun, coming over the hill, these tariffs, they're going to destroy our country. And what we really need to do is sit down and talk about the serious issues, which is, the decline of the Canadian dollar, the carbon tax, just all the taxes we pay in general. So I'm very much limited government. I'm a opponent of taxation.
All taxation?
Personally, yes. I am an opponent of all taxation, but not to the somebody's got to keep the lights on, somebody's got to pave the roads, but it needs to be reasonable. So if I go to, for example, to give you an analogy, if I go to a gym, like I give a monthly membership fee, but there's an understanding that I get something back, use of their equipment. I think we've surpassed that. So when I give tax money to like a dairy cartel, I still don't understand what that is. That's a quota system, but millions of dollars are going into it. Like, where does that money go? You have to get something back for the taxation. It's not that I believe there should be absolutely zero taxes. You still need a military. You still need a court.
Some of the more Milton Friedman type essential parts of government that I guess that you would agree with, very, very minimal.
Yeah, I mean, that would be a good way to put it. But going back to what I said about, I'm all about truth. I'm also about education. So we have to understand, like, if we start from the position that we understand what the purpose of government is, I think we'd come up with better taxation policy. But since we don't really understand that, we don't have political philosophy in schools. I went through a public education system. I came out just completely brain dead on the other end. So, so it's very easy for a politician to go up there and say, we're going to slash the carbon tax. We're going to slash this tax, that tax. But if we don't have good tax policy rooted in values, principles, and a vision for the country, we end up here.
It's interesting you bring up education because that was a big issue for me, and I was going to ask you, what was your main issue that would give you the impetus to run for political office? For me, it was education. I had children just about to enter into the education system in Ontario, and I looked into the public school system and the private school system and found them so lacking. I was so upset that I ran for trustee and became a trustee for a couple of terms. Quite an eye opener. And then from then on, I ran for the Canadian Alliance and then sort of involved in politics. But for me, it was education. What was that burning issue for you that would get you to say that this is now part of my life, politics? I want to be a member of parliament.
It was it was sort of like a slow drip. Um, at first, it was little things. So I was living downtown Vancouver for a while. There's Cole Harbor. There's a restaurant called Tap and Barrel. You can go in the restaurant and you can buy a beer. But if you want to walk, you can't walk that beer out to the patio, which is maybe 10 meters away because you have to walk over a sidewalk. So it's illegal. So what a grown man, have to do is I have to give the drink to a waitress. I have to go sit down outside and she'll bring the drink to me. It's a very simple thing. It's not like cataclysmic in my life, but why do we have to have a government that tells me I'm so irresponsible I can't step over a sidewalk?
So it was
I think if
an affront to your rationality and your autonomy as a thinking human being.
Yes, if you want to, you're much better with words than I am. You're right. I just, maybe it's because I grew up in like the 90s and I remember the freedom that we had. I used to travel around the world a lot. I used to go to Turkey, Greece, Italy. In the 90s, especially in that area, the Mediterranean, it's more, just everybody take care of themselves. And you don't have the government coming in and policing you. You don't have that government that pretends like it's your parent. That's what really angered me. And it got steadily worse and worse, and then it completely took off during COVID.
Yeah, I've traveled a little bit in my life, and I've seen other countries, especially in Latin America, where what we might consider to be anarchy down there works really well. It's not anarchist. Like I'm thinking Costa Rica, for example. In Tamarindo, Costa Rica, you can have people coming up selling pot to you. You can have a prostitute on the street plying her trade. But you know something? Everything's peaceful. And I saw one cop during that entire week or two I spent down there. One cop, and he was helping a little lady cross the road. And this was a peaceful, uh, rather free country without a military, by the way, Costa Rica. So I'm thinking you take, as a visitor from Canada, you go to these other places and you take back some observations like, why do we do it this way? Why can't I take a beer from here to there? Why am I paying these taxes? Why are these regulations in place? It takes movement throughout the world to have an objective view, I think, on your own nation. And that seems to me to be what is what is helping you to decide to be a candidate for the People's Party, which is the only party talking about these issues, fundamental issues in Canada. What are your impressions about how you fit, knowing what you know now, with the People's Party of Canada?
The People's Party, it's a big tent party. So myself, I'm more on the libertarian end, like limited government. There's a big group. I'd say the biggest one are the classical liberals. You have the classical conservatives, like fiscal conservatives. You have Christian conservatives, and then you have the more nationalists in the party. And it's interesting that you have to learn to get along because a lot of these people that come in, they're also disenfranchised NDP. So you get a disenfranchised NDP voter that's now a candidate, or disenfranchised liberal voter. And they still bring with them their I don't know, their tendencies towards socialism, which is fine. They want a welfare state, they want to help people. So it's the good thing about the People's Party is that they don't tell the candidates how they have to think. So whereas, I'm more free market, somebody else might, support universal healthcare system just to reform it. And we have enough liberty within the party to pursue what we think that our constituents want.
I would agree. During 2019, when the party started, I attended the conference, their first conference in Gatineau, Quebec, and interviewed maybe 10 to 20 candidates. And Maxime, I've interviewed Maxime several times. And I'm thinking, what other political party would allow their candidates to be interviewed and to speak freely about issues unscripted and have them put up on social media? I can't think. Conservative? No. Liberal? Definitely not. NDP? Maybe. They're a bunch of activists anyway, and so they thrive on that kind of stuff. But the two parties that have always been in power, the Liberals, Conservatives, you as a member or a candidate at least have to shut up. You're not allowed to offer your own viewpoint. You're there to bolster the leader. That's it. You vote for the leader. Keep your opinion to yourself. It's written in our documents what you have to believe and how to vote. But with the People's Party, Maxime has been very clear that, except for matters of confidence, budgets, things of that nature, major policy decisions, you as a candidate, Peyman, can come onto my show and speak about things philosophic and political and do so freely, because Maxime, as a leader, is not leading with a whip, which is the actual technical term in Parliament for the party person who keeps people in line, the whip. He's more of a shepherd. You can go off and graze wherever you like, but when it comes down to issues of confidence in a party, you must vote this way. That's why you get our endorsement for the People's Party of Canada. Do you have that same feeling that Maxime is very much more of a shepherd rather than an authoritarian dictator?
I really like that term. I'm going to start using it as shepherd. That's exactly right. You hit the nail on the head.
Yeah.
Um, the party it's almost somewhere in between these establishment parties that have complete control over the messaging and independent candidates, which unfortunately they don't really stand a chance because of the way the campaign finance laws work here. They can't give tax receipts. I wanted to give an example of Doug Ford. He's having an election right now in his province, Ontario, and he's told his candidates. I heard this from a new blue party candidate that I guess it's the progressive conservatives in
Yeah.
Ontario. Those candidates are not allowed to talk to the press. Like Doug Ford has said that. In Sault Ste. Marie, either today or tomorrow, that there's a debate, and they're not sure if the candidate for the PCs he's even going to show up.
They won't. As a matter of fact, sorry to interject, but I
Uh,
know people running in that election, not for New Blue, but for Freedom Party. And yes, the PCs are not attending all candidates' debates. They do not trust their candidates not to say something which may embarrass Doug Ford, even though he needs no help in that respect.
Yeah, and I can understand why they're doing it from like an organizational perspective. If you look at these political parties, almost like a business, and they have a goal. The goal is to get in, and they look at the metrics and they say, all right, if we let our candidates talk, the media might hold their feet to the fire. We have a 30% chance of winning. If they don't talk, they have a 45% chance of winning. So let's just tell them not to talk. But this is my problem with the political system in Canada. It's these political parties, they behave like they have a fiduciary responsibility to the party and I guess the board instead of to the voters. So I just want to tie one last thing. I want to tie it back to populism. Some people think that word means what's popular, 51% or whatever. But to me, populism is identifying that we have this like this cartel of the media and the political parties working together to keep everybody out, and then you have the people that are trying to work around that system. So Max is trying to work around that political party media cartel. And so he's telling his candidates, go out there and as the shepherd, he's telling his flock, like, go out there and get the message out any way you can.
To that point, how much do you think with your campaign will you rely on the legacy media, the bought and paid for government media, to get your name out there and your message? Or are you totally going to be relying on social media platforms like this one, Just Right Media? And how I did it was pamphlets. Wrote them up myself. Went to a printer, had them printed out, and went door to door. That was so effective. So, what is this legacy media to you as a candidate now?
So I'm going to use a term that the Americans use, the air game and the ground game. When it comes to the ground game, I like to go directly to the voters, a meet and greet, a town hall, a potluck party, barbecue, something for me to get in front of them, and I can explain at length. They can ask me 10 questions, 60 seconds per question, and I can show them who I am. I can tell them that I'm a good human being. I'm not doing this for a pension. So that's the ground game. And then there's the air game. I am absolutely not relying on the mainstream media. I'm actually assuming that they will give me 0% coverage like they've given the PPC the last few years. Social media, I am using that. I have my podcast to limited success because it's long format. We're trying to get in any way we can, but my goal in the next few months, possibly years, is to go to all of these people on social media and say, listen, the influencers, the podcasters, if you truly want to save your country, let's come up with like a manifesto, a set of rules that we can all operate under. For example, don't disrespect one another, go on each other's shows. If one of you attacks one, don't retaliate. Attack the message, not the messenger. And let's try to prevent the government taking over social media like they did with the mainstream media.
I like that. As a matter of fact, I call that cross-pollination between platforms. So Just Right Media, Laura Lynn Tyler Thompson, all the other type of social media platforms that are out there from a somewhat on the political dichotomy, right of that dichotomy. I'm not calling it a spectrum anymore. It's not a spectrum. You got good and evil. You got truth and lies. We're on the side of truth and good. Everybody else is degrees of lies. So, yeah, in that left-right dichotomy, yeah, let's talk with each other. Let's get on each other's shows. Let's not badmouth each other and move in that direction. It's a vector. We're moving in a direction towards truth. So I like that
Yeah.
cross-pollination. Yeah,
It's a trajectory we're on towards truth.
yeah. Um, Now, since the summer of 2023, if you follow the polls, and I go to 338canada.com quite often, they publish their results after Sundays, every Sunday. And since the summer of 2023, the Liberals have shown themselves to be in free fall and the Conservatives in ascendance to be the next governing party in Canada until just recently, with the announcement of Justin Trudeau saying that he's stepping down. All of a sudden, the Liberals have rebounded significantly to the point now where, while they were facing utter defeat before and a major majority by Conservatives, they're now in that realm of maybe even hanging on with a minority government, just below that. And I want your opinion on how the tactic of attacking the leader of the party, Justin Trudeau, as a personality, failed because all the Liberals had to do was get rid of him, and now they're ready to be governing again. So what part of opposition should be focused on political parties and their ideologies and their policies and their platforms and their and what they've done, the laws that they've enacted, versus taking on Trudeau, oh, blackface Trudeau, this buffoon, this clown, this embarrassment on the world stage, but now he's gone. So that tactic was bad. What do you think about that?
I don't know how long you want me to talk about this, but
Long as you like.
2020, 2022, um, the people kind of went to the government and they said, we didn't sign up for this. Like we had a contract, a social contract, and you violated it. You could call it the charter. And they said either stop violating it or step down. And instead, Trudeau brought in the military and invoked the Emergencies Act. I'm using the word military loosely. And then the people kind of went to the Conservative Party as their, first best hope. And even I voted, and we gave Pierre a first round win. And that first round gave him a mandate. Like we wanted him to go in and fix the problem. Now, I understand that his hands were tied. He because of this NDP Liberal coalition, but he didn't come out swinging. Like if you look at his messaging, the way that he marketed to people, he would constantly flip-flop. First, he did those videos where, I think maybe his wife or his friend is recording, is in the Maritime provinces talking about liquefied natural gas. That didn't really work. Then they put him in a muscle shoot and muscle shirt, and they got him to do push-ups. That didn't really work. And then they paid another firm to come up with all these new videos, and nothing really worked. And recently he got I think he's finally realized he's got to unleash his candidates. And one of his candidates came out with a video slamming monopolies, government run monopolies and supported monopolies. So the messaging wasn't very good. And the problem, in my opinion, and I'll stop shortly. The problem is that the Conservative Party doesn't stand for anything. So if you look at the NDP party, they stand for wealth redistribution. I call it communism. The Liberals, they're progressives. They stand for consistently progressing towards something new, LGBTQ, woke, climate change. The Conservatives, I don't know what they are. They're like liberal light. So it doesn't really resonate. You're trying to sell a product, but your customer doesn't know what the product is. So and this ties into the fact that all he really had was I'm not Trudeau, kind of like how Joe Biden was I'm not Trump. Okay, Trudeau's gone now, and his entire strategy sort of blew up in his face.
Well put. And I think that that's very accurate. And I've been watching the Conservative Party over many years, only endorsed them once, and that was when Stephen Harper was vying for his fourth term and he lost. And because that was an existential issue on immigration, and the PPC did not exist. So I would normally spoil my ballot or decline it. This time I said Harper, but then Harper, for the three terms that he was in, two minority and a majority, did nothing. Did nothing fundamental to change the country in a way that conservatives thought that he might do it. He kept the CBC. He kept everything that the previous Liberals governments brought in. And every single time, it's like Lucy holding the football for Charlie Brown. Oh, we're going to do this. We're going to do that. Yes, come, Charlie Brown, kick the football. And every single time, without fail, she yanks it away. And that is the Conservative Party of Canada for the last 100 years. Is a lot of talk and absolutely no action. So I'm not surprised that you think that they're a party of no substance because it's accurate. They are a party of no substance. And anybody who would think that Pierre Poilievre is any different than all of the other conservative, progressive conservative leaders before him are fooling themselves. There is a machinery behind the Conservative Party and behind Mr. Poilievre that will not allow any kind of deviation from the path that they have been on, and that is a liberal path, and that is a caretaker government. While the liberals may be kicked out this time in 2025, if the election is held then, um, my friend Silly Mansour calls him the spare wheel. So, okay, so the car, you pull over the car, you put on a spare wheel, but you're still going in the same direction. And that is a conservative party. So I'm so glad that you're running for the People's Party because that is the only alternative, the only hope for anybody who might want to change our government for the better. You brought up Trump. Um, Sorry for editorializing there. This is your
Oh,
this is your interview, but I tell you, man, politics it gets under your collar. The rhetoric of President Trump of late has caused many in Canada to actually analyze the fundamental structure of what makes our nation. With his comment about be the 51st state, Governor Trudeau, those little offhand remarks are quite cute, but people start to take them a little seriously. And now you've got a movement in Alberta saying, yeah, let's be the 51st state. Why not? 1905, we didn't vote to become part of Canada. It was done by the legislatures. We had no say in it. Maybe now we need a say. So, what do you think of Trump's rhetoric and how it may have shifted the dialogue in Canada towards us starting to rethink our fundamental nature as a nation?
that's a really good question. We could go back to 2022. So that narrative arc I drew, we went to Ottawa, military. We put our weight behind Pierre Poilievre. Um, we've tried and tried and tried to get this leader out, Justin Trudeau, and he won't leave. He's just dug in like a tick. So along comes Donald Trump, and he extends this opportunity, join us as the 51st state. And this sort of divides the country. And you could almost say it divides it amongst the people that are brainwashed by the media. So this narrative that Donald Trump is a monster and we are patriotic Canadians. So it's almost like the message went out like, all right, everybody, we're dropping the Ukraine flag and we're going to adopt the Canada flag again. So there's a reset switched. And then you got the other people who've been so beat down, like they've had their wealth robbed from them. They've had their liberties stripped of them. They've been called racist for the last few years, the lockdown, and they're looking at the US and they don't see a downside. Now, I'm not advocating for joining the US. I don't think it's a good idea. I mean, we have to get there on our own. But what no one is saying to them is like, here are the benefits of staying Canadian. You'll get free healthcare. Well, we don't really have free healthcare. You'll get good education. Well, we got drag queen story hour in the schools. So like, tell me what, we have what, free speech? We don't even have God-given rights. So in the absence of a counter argument, this has completely taken over the nation.
For the better, I think, because we really need a good shakeup in this country to understand that we're not a sovereign people in the sense that in the United States is. I mean, in their founding documents, we the people. In Canada, it's us, the Parliament. Parliament is sovereign in this nation, and the people have no say in it at all. So these fundamental discussions, I think, are really good, much like a good slap in the face to make you start to, ooh, like what I've been on drugs, all this time thinking Canada is this fantastic country. And while it is certainly good, relatively speaking, compared to other nations on the planet, it has a long way to go. And I'm with you, Peyman. I don't think we should be the 51st state or the 51st to 61st state. I think we can do better than the United States if we put our heads together and start from first principles about individual rights and look at how the good things that have happened in the United States, throw out the bad stuff, and reinvent ourselves as a nation that Americans would want to be part of rather than Canadians joining them. I'd like to see Americans say, like, what's happening up in Canada? Let's follow them. I think we could do that if we put our minds together and have a major cultural shift. And along that line of cultural shift, do you think the People's Party of Canada right now is more or less a placeholder party? Because the polls show that the PPC will not do do well in the election. They've done well before, always growing up to 5% in the last election. The polls show the PPC down now to 2, 3%, sometimes 4, depending on the riding that you're looking at. Is it a placeholder party where people can vote to store their value, to vote their values, until there's such a time that Canadian culture catches up to the PPC?
Yes and no. I think the challenge the PPC has right now is the media blackout. So I did a meet and greet yesterday, and I was surprised. Everybody was 50 plus, and they kept saying you have to get on social media more. What they were saying is you need to advertise more so we know what the party is so that we can spread the message. So in the absence of um, Max's ability to sell the party through the media, my personal opinion, the responsibility falls to the candidates. So if the candidates take the initiative and they rally around Max and they recognize that Max can't do this on his own, if you have the media on your side, the leader can do that. But without that, the candidates as like the forward frontline sales force has to go. I'm sorry, I'm using business terms. That has to go out there and talk to the voters and educate them like this is very much an educational thing. So as for the polls, my view is that everything is fluid. So when you started the episode, you were mentioning how, there was this commanding lead from the Conservative Party, and then now the Liberals have closed that gap. Tomorrow, Donald Trump might come out and say something again that might change things. And the People's Party has to capitalize on that, specifically the weakness of the Conservative Party in that they've been boxed in. So the Liberal Party is almost moved to the right of the Conservative Party fiscally, and then they put up this wall and they said you cannot go 1 inch to the right of this to support America first. So Pierre Poilievre's under a tremendous amount of pressure. Um, if I can just add one last thing, the People's Party, in my opinion, with through its platform, is the best party right now for Canada. But it has sort of advanced the conversation as far as a political party can. So when you say it's a placeholder, what I tell to the people is, you have to educate yourselves. We have to educate ourselves. And you have to want those things that Robert Vaughan just talked about, which is loosely property rights. If we adopt property rights, if we acknowledge the sovereignty of the individual, we can be a better country than the US. So I'm doing whatever I can to make sure that I get a seat, but I understand your arguments.
And I don't want to necessarily be a wet blanket or be negative about this, because while the polls, as you quite rightly say, are fluid and change all the time and things can happen, you cannot win a lottery without buying a ticket. And this is our ticket to freedom, the PPC. So while right now they may be low in the polls, there is always that possibility. And one conservative once told me politics is the science of the possible. And without that People's Party of Canada being there to capitalize on things that may happen in the future, who knows? Like, for example, Trudeau steps down, all of a sudden, boom, the Liberals are way back up in the polls, the Conservatives are down. One misquote, one misspeaking by a candidate in the Conservative Party, and all of a sudden the CBC Global and CTV jump down their throats, and boom, they could change their fortunes. Who knows? There's been major shakeup in the legacy media in the United States, people being fired from the Democrat supporters in the United States media are being fired, and the narrative is changing. This could happen in this country. who knows? Might get a new leader in some of the corporations that own the media in this country, and there's only a handful. All you need is one or two of them to change and to be a little more honest with the people. And who knows, Maxime could bump right up in the polls, and you have to be there to take advantage of those almost unpredictable um, white swan events to win. So yeah, I don't want to be a naysayer about this payment. I want to be let people know that when you vote your values, when you have the PPC there, there's always the chance that just like with Bob Rae and the NDP in Ontario, all of a sudden winning, nobody was more surprised than Bob Rae. That goes back quite a few years now, but I remember that election and they were flummoxed. They were gobsmacked. They didn't know what to say that we won the election. It's because things just happened in the right way. And in a multi-party system, the PPC could very well have seats in this election. And I certainly hope for it. Now, before we end off on this, I'd like to ask you about what you've been doing yourself to push the cultural narrative in Canada with your interviews, because you're basically doing what I've been doing over the last year or so, and I've been doing it for many years now, but just as a labor of love. And I know why I do it. Why do you reach out to people like a Major Russ Cooper or some of the other Canadians, Greg Wycliffe, I think you just read, interviewed recently, movers and shakers in social media who are dissenters to the narrative of the mainstream media and the legacy parties in Parliament. What is it in it for you?
There's a lot of reasons. The most important one is I was volunteering for the National Citizens Inquiry, and once in a while, emails would come in from citizens, some farmer, some rural Ontario, and I'd call them up, and we would have these fascinating conversations. And it's not like he would tell me about his lovely wife or, his grandchildren, they're playing. It's not like that. He would tell me about a situation where the CRA came after his wife because they found a way to, pay less taxes. Or he would give me life advice about what it's like living on a farm. And I thought to myself, well, you know, why would I sit down and do hundreds of hours of research to figure this stuff out when I could just jump on a phone call with somebody for 1 year, 1 hour, and they give me like a decade's worth of experience. So that's sort of where my podcast came out of. In lay terms, my job is to take their life experiences and convert it into layman's terms, which is actually not that hard to do because ordinary people talk in simple terms anyway. That was one of the reasons. Another reason is I kind of realized that if I'm going to run as an outsider, I cannot rely on the brand recognition of one of these big parties to usher me along the finish line. I have to be like above and beyond intelligent of what's going on. I might not have to know every single figure, but I have to know fundamentally what's the problem with tax law, what's the problem with the military, what's the problem with trade. And again, I don't have $1 million budget to pay a firm to tell me this, but I can tap on some Canadian citizen's shoulders, say, hey, do you want to have a conversation? And in furtherance of that, it's a lot easier for me to do that if I have a platform than if I just like I can't look up the white pages and randomly call people, right? And
Fascinating.
then yeah, that's sort of where it started. There are some other reasons. Like I firmly believe that just because someone has a differing opinion, I'm an immigrant. If somebody believes that, we should not be letting immigrants in or this should be an Anglo nation only, the solution to that is not to shut that person down. And I get a lot of heat for this, but I bring him on and I'm like, pitch your idea. If the rest of Canada wants it, well, who am I, Peyman Askari, to stand in the way? So I give him a platform. People get really angry. They say, why do you bring that guy on? I don't agree with his views.
No, and I agree with you that nobody's perfect. And while I think my philosophy has stood me in good stead, it would be rather arrogant of me or anybody else to suggest that it is a one-size-fits-all philosophy. I think it is, but I'm not all. I'm one. So I'm glad that you're doing that, and it seems like you have the love of it to and the right attitude about it to continue it, which I hope you do. It's a long slog, and I think you're in good company. And I'm not just talking about myself, but a lot of influencers out there think that perhaps, oh, well, I've only got 1,000 views. If you know what 1,000 people look like, it's an amazing effect, or even a few hundred views. It's an amazing effect. I think one of my videos has surpassed over 100,000 views, and that was a video I did with Jordan Peterson. Another one with a British Columbia pathologist who's it's been seen over 50,000 times. I mean, my God. Every now and then you luck into something that resonates with people and they own it and they take it and they run with it and it goes viral and it's such a good feeling. And I hope that you continue to do what you're doing to help push the narrative or at least have a dialogue, even with people who you may disagree with. A dialogue is absolutely essential to have an open democracy and an informed electorate. So thank you for what you've been doing with the interviews, and thank you for standing for the People's Party of Canada, Peyman. And I hope all success in the whenever the election happens, that you hit the ground running and that you're successful. So thanks for joining us today.
Thank you very much for having me on, Robert.